obsession with cars started from as early as I can remember. As a child, the only gifts I was ever interested in were cars. The thing I like about cars the most, if I was to really distill it down to one thing, is really about the thrill of driving and the emotions that come with driving a car. I started collecting cars quite recently, mostly in the past 10 years. Prior to that, my interest was really in sort of the latest and the greatest, as most young people are like. But as I grew older, my interest in older cars started to grow, and in particular, cars from the 1950s onwards. Yeah, in building a car collection, there are multiple ways to do it. For myself, the criteria is probably a little bit different than the typical collector, in that my main criteria has to do with, does this car deliver a unique driving experience? By focusing on the driving experience, invariably, you would be looking at many different brands, many different types of cars, which becomes quite broad across the range. So let's start with the oldest one. Here we have a 1961 Ferrari 250 short wheelbase. This car to me is the most beautiful car ever made. This car was launched in 1959. They made 164 of them. And this particular example is particularly special because the first owner was a Roman professor. When he ordered the car in 1960 from Ferrari, he made 17 special requests. If you look at this flush door handle, you look at these chrome vents on the side, these special seats, dashboard layout, these are all part of special requests by this Roman professor to Enzo Ferrari back in the day. And these correspondences still exist today and came with the car. So the car has a very unique history, and to me, the most beautiful car ever made. Here we have a 1973 Porsche Carrera 2.7 RS. In the early 1970s, Porsche developed this car for one particular reason, and that is to go racing. And in that particular point in time, in order to take this car racing, they had to build 500 of them. So there we had the birth of what is known as the Porsche RS Rennsport models, which today in Porsche's lineup still features quite prominently as a special range. This particular one from 1973 is the original, the first RS model ever made, and it offers the most pure, exhilarating driving experience of the 911 range from then until now. So this is also a very special car. This particular car has a competition history. Whilst now it's been completely restored to as it was new, in the mid-70s and late 70s, its first and second European owner took the car on many different rallies. So in the history file accompanying this car, you will see photographs and records of this car being raced in period before being restored in recent times to being the state of which you see it as today. That is one of the interesting elements of collecting classic cars, is there is some element of history attached to that particular car. There's usually very interesting stories to tell for each of these cars. So the third car we have here is a Japanese car from the 1990s. And to me, the 1990s for Japanese cars was almost like a golden era. So here we have a Honda NSX. This is the Type R model. When Honda came out with the NSX model, they had one mission in mind, and that was to take the fight to the likes of Ferrari and Porsche. They were very ambitious, and in many ways, they succeeded. This car is packed with a lot of innovations, such as using a full aluminum body construction for the car to be very light. The cockpit design is modeled off an F-16 fighter jet. And in fact, this car very much became the benchmark of a lot of the European manufacturers because of its success as a car which was very high performance, but yet completely usable. So this particular Type R model is a special edition of the NSX. They made 483 of them. It's lighter than the standard NSX, and also it has a special parts to enhance the performance. So this is also a very special car, and a little bit unusual that you wouldn't normally see a Ferrari collector interested in a Honda. But for me, it's down to the driving experience. This is a Pagani Zonda. This car to me is the quintessential hypercar. because it has a naturally aspirated V12 engine, a full carbon fiber construction for very light weight and rigidity, and of course a lot of exquisite materials, craftsmanship, which you can see throughout. Look at the design of this car. It's actually 20 years old, but you would never have guessed that. This particular model is, again, very, very special. It's a Zonda Fantasma Evo, the only one like that in the world. And I had the great fortune to work with Horacio Pagani, the founder of Pagani, to come up with this particular specification. And there are some parts on this car which are unique and never been done before in the history of Pagani until I worked together with Mr. Pagani to make this creation. So this one is especially dear to me. So here we have the newest car of these 5, and this is the Pagani Huayra Roadster. Now this car, I've waited more than 4 years for it to be made. I remember in 2015, first seeing the renderings and sketches of the concept. I immediately fell in love with it because it was like an art piece. The development process took quite a bit of time to complete, but I think as you can see the results, it's been completely worth the wait. This car is the car you want to take for long journeys. I remember taking delivery of it last year. First thing we did was to send it to Japan and drive it for 1,000 kilometers. This is an incredible car to drive for very long distances. The specification of this car, the details, I could go on for hours to tell you the many months that we spent to specify every single little detail of this car to make it perfect. I started my racing in 2004, and those were mostly races throughout China. Also did Macau Grand Prix twice. But then as I got a little bit older, I stopped for a few years. And in recent times, I picked it up again, and I've taken it to another level completely. Now I'm competing in Europe in a endurance championship in the GT3 category. And last year, I had the great pleasure of winning the first race in Monza in Italy with my 2 teammates in a Ferrari. So that was one of my career highlights so far. And also to have the opportunity to represent Hong Kong as a racing athlete is another thing that's been really, really special. So being a better driver there will also allow me to enjoy the cars a little bit more, so they go hand in hand. I have a motto, that is, get out and drive. So you need to stay true to that. I need to stay true to that.